Hi there, I'm Nick, and I'd like to thank you for joining me on my 2022 wrap-up video. It's been a hell of a ride, and I've accomplished much more than I could have ever anticipated. I was originally going to shoot this video in Springbank Park here in London, Ontario, but as I spent most of the last 2 years out here in my backyard in isolation, I thought this would be a much more fitting spot to shoot. Before we can get into why my 2022 was so successful, we need to go back into 2020. That was a rough year for me. I went through a divorce, my son graduated high school, and at the very end of 2020, I interviewed for a job that I've been preparing for several years. I made the final round of interviews, but ultimately wasn't successful. But in true Nick fashion, I got back up on the horse. Actually, if I'm being totally honest, I sulked for quite a while. I was frustrated, I was angry, I didn't really know what to do. But I used that as inspiration to find happiness. I took that time to work on myself. As 2021 progressed, I started using my social media basically as a diary, sharing all my highlights, my successes, my failures, and that is when my son joined the trade with me. He became a sheet metal worker, and I started sharing those stories across Twitter. And as we were in isolation, I was spending too much time at the liquor store. Happens to the best of us, doesn't it? So about halfway through 2021, I set out a few goals that I really wanted to achieve. One was getting my drinking under control. Number two was getting back into my community and making a positive impact. Number three was I really wanted to promote skilled trades. Having a young son just getting into it, I wanted to help inspire some kind of change for the better, for the next generation of tradespeople. And number four was throughout the pandemic, I started tuning into podcasts and actually fell in love with them. And it was my goal for 2022 to appear in at least one podcast. For several years, I served as a board of director for an organization in town called Dad Club London. I eventually stepped down because I was becoming toxic. But as 2022 rolled around, there was an opportunity to get back on the board. So I applied, and thankfully, I was brought back in. That is what started 2022 for me, and I'm so thankful for that. We've accomplished so much this year in London. I'm proud to say that I played a huge part in bringing to London our first BIPOC crosswalk. If you're not sure what that is, BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. Considering the climate here in London the last several years, I really thought it was important to make a statement that everybody in this community is welcome and accepted. One of the most interesting parts for me this year was partaking in Dry January. And I'm proud to say that not only did I complete Dry January, but I completed Dry February as well. I mentioned how I was using social media as a diary, sharing my stories about my son and myself working in trades together. That caught the attention of the Ministry of Labor, and they reached out to us to shoot promotional video with Minister of Labor, Monty McNaughton, on his new segment called Trade Talks with Monty.
Hi, I'm Monty McNaughton, Ontario's Minister of Labour, Training and Skills Development. I'm here with Nick and his son, Nick Jr. They are both sheet metal workers. Nick Sr. has been in the trades for many years. We're going to talk about that. And Nick Jr. has been in an apprenticeship for 7 months.
And it was the beginning of something amazing. It was a phenomenal experience. It just made me want to do more. I reached out to Youth Opportunities Unlimited, Support Ontario Youth, the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, and Skills Ontario to see what I could do to make a difference. Skills Ontario was one of the organizations that I first spoke with. And in those discussions, Jennifer Green of Skills Ontario suggested that I reach out to one of her friends, Jamie McMillan, who runs an organization called Kick-Ass Careers. And she asked me to become an ambassador. Shortly after that, I took Nick to Boston for St. Patrick's Day to see the Dropkick Murphys live in concert. It was always something that's been on top of my bucket list for years, and we were finally able to do it. And if you know anything about me, I'm a massive Boston Red Sox fan. And while we were there, Fenway Park was under construction, and one of the construction workers there gave me a brick from Fenway Park. Shortly after getting back from Boston, I appeared on 2 Skill Trade podcasts, Skill Stadium and Straight Outta Crumpton. A little while later, a magazine publication called The Moxie, Women in Infrastructure, asked me to write an op-ed about my experiences with women in trades. And back to Twitter, I decided I'm going to start making videos. I started by trying to get Premier Ford's attention to bring back his Cooking with Doug segment. I started posting on Twitter every time I made something and tried to call him out to make something better. But somewhere in all of that, I used this platform to talk about trades, try to get the Premier's attention. And this was around the time of provincial elections. I attended my first political rally when Doug Ford came to London. And I gotta tell you, I loved the energy and the message that he brought. I ended up going out to Monty McNaughton's re-election party, spent time there with Nick. We celebrated his landslide win. It was around this time that we did unveil that BIPOC crosswalk here in London, and shortly thereafter, we entered the Rocket on behalf of Dad Club London in the London Pride Parade. I think one of the biggest changes of my life in 2022 was changing employers. I'd spent several years in my previous company, but I was unhappy and I needed some change. I finally joined Orzik Heating and Cooling, and I gotta tell you, I could not be happier. Shortly after joining Orzik Heating and Cooling, I ended up going to the PC convention in Toronto and serving as a delegate. While at the convention, I was able to talk to many people within government and share my message about skilled trades. I really got to chat with a lot of like-minded individuals in that sense of tackling this shortage. It was a great experience. I loved every second of it. And I finally got to meet the man, the boss, the leader, the Premier, Doug Ford. Just an absolute beauty. Got a good sense of humor on him too. Because I told him I was sick and tired of harassing him across social media and that he had to start bringing back these segments where he was cooking and baking. And if you've seen his Halloween video where he's carving pumpkins, or you saw his Christmas video just recently where he was decorating cookies, may have nothing to do with me, but I'm taking full credit for him doing that. I was able to shoot a podcast with Dan Cardinal of Skills Ontario. And around the same time, I was also invited out by Skills Ontario to serve as a marshal for their competition in 2023 in Toronto. I had the opportunity to volunteer with Skills Ontario and the Ministry of Labour at their Level Up career fairs that they just unveiled this year, and that was the best experience of my life. I got to talk one-on-one to thousands of students about skilled trades, about the pathways, the benefits, the opportunities. Site News out of BC started a little series talking to tradespeople they'd considered to be influential, and they reached out to me about providing an opinion on some of my favorite reads and my favorite music. So thank you, Site News. And this was around the time that we had the Hyde Park Christmas Parade last month. Great time, great turnout. It was awesome. We actually won most entertaining float at this parade. That was pretty cool. I've been an Oak Ridge Optimist for many years, and I even served on the board of directors at one time, serving as the vice president of youth. I haven't really done a lot with the Optimists in the last couple of years. The Oak Ridge Optimists were hosting a kettle here at Remark. I jumped on, like I try to do every year when those kettles come up, and it was great being back out with the Optimist Club again. Construction Connect was another organization from out west that wanted to shoot a podcast. We shot that last week. One of the most interesting things that came across my plate this year was from a curator from Museum London. I was presented with this opportunity to share my story of resilience throughout the course of the year. And this curator somehow came across my socials and saw a lot of the skilled trade advocating I was doing and really thought it'd be a great story. So in 2023, I'll be part of an exhibit for the first time in my life in a museum. And at the start of December, I was able to participate in my favorite volunteer activity that I had started with Dad Club London several years ago. And that was the teddy bear toss with the Salvation Army and the London Knights. This has always been a phenomenal experience. It's something that I've always gotten to do with my son, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. I'm looking forward to continuing that in 2023 and beyond. Because of my socials, I was able to connect with someone in Boston, Mass, who runs a podcast out that way called Inside the Trades. But I'm going to be having a guest on his show at some point down the road, and I'm really excited about that one too. And that YouTube show that kind of started out as a joke, trying to get Premier Ford's attention, turned into its own animal altogether. I found my own corner of the internet where I could share my love of cooking while talking about skilled trades. I'd never shot a video in my life prior to starting this YouTube series. I've been having a blast with them. I'm not even sure where this show is going to be going, but it's going to be going upward, I'll tell you that. So that's my 2022 in a nutshell. I gave back to my community. I got more involved in advocating for skilled trades. I made so many more connections and friendships along the way, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Anyhow, next video that you'll see from me will be the official beginning of Nick Flicks and Skills. Catch you in the next one, friends.